Meeting of County Council is called to order. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Erie County Council. Ms. Law, would you please give us a prayer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us pray. God, we recently had a day of remembrance of our veterans who fought for us, our freedom, and the symbol of our great country. The flag is placed at the graves of those honored men and women to remind us of the symbol they fought to defend. We ask you to bless the graves of the fallen and the flag they protected. The flag has walked in silence with each of our honored dead to their final resting place. It has flown through peace and war, strife and prosperity, and amidst it all, it has been respected. We honor it, we respect it, and we defend it with lives. We ask, Lord, that our enemies will never tear it down from its lofty position, lest it never will return. We fix our eyes on its beauty to see. We see her battered body and endure her death and shame. We question with the truth and communication, believe in God and freedom. God, bless our veterans. Let us honor them by taking care of what they fought to protect, our freedom, our democracy, and our way of life, and our flag. Amen.
Amen. Roll call, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Brenneman,
Here.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Here.
Dr. Faust.
Here.
Mrs. Fatika,
Here.
Mr. Leone,
Here.
Mrs. Law,
Here.
Mr. Horton.
Here. We'll move on to the next item, item 4. If you're following along on your agenda, this is always, this part is one of the more fun things that we do. And so I'm going to ask Councilwoman Fatika to stand up for the presentation of a citation to Ms. Kayla Bond.
Kayla, is there anyone that you would like to have up here with you?
My
that you
parents
brought?
and my Girl Scout leader.
All right, that would be Sharon and Charles Bond, and your leader's name is?
Jody Sando.
Jody Sando. Come around here.
Well, I just want to give you all a hand. I know when young people like Kayla accomplish things, I know that there's a lot of wind beneath their wings in the support system, and not all children have that support system, so thank you for being so supportive of your child.
Thank you. Kayla will soon be a graduate of McDowell High School, and she's being presented this award because she has reached the highest honor in Girl Scouting. I found my old Girl Scout pin. I wore it tonight in your honor. We're very proud of everything that you've accomplished, and I'm thrilled that I'm able to be here to present this and recognize you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you did?
I did a anti-bullying puppet stage, and on each side there's different posters on how people walk, talk, see, and hear, and how we can interpret. I made an informational pamphlet that all the parents could take, and then there's some of my props that I made with the help of my mother. And I had the help of my dad with the stage, and I helped him put it all together, and me interacting with the children at the Erie Children's Museum.
I'm going to read part of the citation. Whereas Caleb Bond developed a project, Be Bigger Than Bullying, featuring a stage for a puppet show, numerous props that represented a range of disabilities, wrote script that encourages positive encounters with anyone who has a disability, and winning the support of the Experience Children's Museum, where she spent more than 15 hours presenting her puppet program to the children at the museum. Now therefore, Be it resolved by Erie County Council that Kayla Vaughn, one of 97 scouts chosen for the Gold Award out of nearly 24,000 Girl Scouts in Western Pennsylvania, has shown us all the path to excellence, pretending a brighter and triumphant future. Congratulations, Kayla. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to say anything, Karen? Parents?
How about her parents?
Just how proud we are of her for overcoming her, what seemed like little obstacles, and she just fought past it, and I couldn't be prouder of her. Really am.
Amen.
And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations again. I see students. I love students. Where are you guys from? McDowell. All right. So Kayla brought her cheering section? Well, welcome to Erie County Council. Now we'll move to item 5, the hearing of the public. I know Mr. Barnes usually calls in. I think we had a snafu with the mail, but I'm going to extend that same opportunity to you, if you will. And so,
Thank you, Chairman, Council, guests. My name is Randy Barnes. I reside in Dr. Faust's district, and yeah, I guess I missed it by a couple hours. I emailed Thursday night, but if I would have been on the agenda, I would have been talking about D&O liability. While that may be a foreign term to you, it should be something that someone in the courthouse knows a little bit about, and that's called Directors and Officers Liability Insurance. I sent in a right to know asking whether the GEIDC had D&O insurance, Directors and Officers Insurance, and apparently nobody in the courthouse knows. Not County Counsel's office, not the county executive, not the any of the solicitors, none of the finance people. Nobody knows if the GEIDC had Directors and Officers Liability Insurance. What we do know is we, as a council, approved to give them $3 million several years ago. And doing some research in here of the 3 council people that are still on council, there was one that voted no. Thank you, Mr. Leone. Sorry you weren't in the majority at that time. We wouldn't be talking about this today. But liability insurance is pretty common among nonprofits. I've done an informal survey of nonprofits that handle over $2 million of tax money and taxpayers' money. I've yet to find any that do not have Directors and Officers Liability Insurance, because the board of directors are liable for the decisions that are made, and especially if they're the wrong decisions. I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this problem if the right decisions were made. We're talking about people that made the wrong decisions. We're talking about, and I want to assume, it's a kind of a dangerous word, but at the GEIDC, the CEO didn't operate in a vacuum. He had the approval of these directors to spend this money. And when we talk about spending money wisely, we know that in Harbor Creek, that organization spent over $2 million on a piece of property that was valued at $700,000. Now, where did they get the $2 million? Well, they got $750,000 from the taxpayers of the $3 million loan. They got another $900,000 from PETA, Pennsylvania Industrial Development Agency. And then, lo and behold, a local bank decided to lend another $515,000 on top of the other 2 loans, the other money. Now remember, we're into this 3 times for what the value of the property was. A local bank lent $500,000 after the taxpayer spent $700,000. PETA loan spent almost $1 million. Now, does it surprise you that one of the vice presidents of that bank was on that board? At GEIDC, does it surprise any of you? Well, I guess not, because that's just commonplace, right? To lend 3 times the amount on a piece of property, and you're a vice president sitting on the board thinking that's good. you understand why nonprofits need D&O insurance, liability insurance? And someday we're going to find out if they had it. Obviously, nobody in the courthouse really cares. Nobody in county government cares whether they had it, because we've already written off the loan. We've written it off. We don't care to find out if they had liability insurance, because it's only $3 million plus interest. Now, that's all it is. But if you look back, you have to remember our county executive who was serving us in Congress in 2010. She brought back a grant for $494,000 of taxpayers' money. So, I mean, it hits kind of close to home, doesn't it? Because I think there's things that we could have used some of those dollars on, but those dollars are gone now. This GEIDC used $600,000 of just in miscellaneous expenses. Just, I don't know, buying coffee or traveling to Europe, just miscellaneous expenses, $600,000. Nearly 10% of the $7 million reported spent on the port. So I guess we're not going to resolve this tonight because, of course, we don't have the answer on the D&O insurance. Nobody in the courthouse knows. Nobody in the courthouse cares to find out because they've sent me back to GEIDC. They said, oh, you just go to the GEIDC and ask them if they have insurance or not, because no one in the courthouse cares to find out. So obviously we aren't going to resolve this tonight. We probably won't resolve it the next meeting. And if I'm standing here 2 years from now talking about it, that's okay, because $3 million is still a substantial amount of money, because between now and the next 2 years, do you think you'll have to ask for a tax increase? Do you think that will come up on the agenda at all? Because it does. I'm going to be here remind you of the $3 million you wrote off without even trying to fight for it, not even asking if they have liability insurance. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you listening, and have a good week.
Thank you. Any other citizens to be heard?
Hello. I just want to say that it's nice that, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I was at that dream where nobody can hear me, so I always check. I'm glad Mr. Horton is better, because I know I was here the last meeting and you were sick, so I'm glad that you're on the mend.
Thank you.
My name is Julie Minnick, that's M-I-N-I-C-H, and I live in Erie City. And I'm from All Aboard Erie. We are a transportation advocacy group. And I found out about the agenda of this meeting on Thursday night at 11 o'clock on the news. So I actually have canceled other meetings to come here tonight because I think it is so important. And I thought I'd do something a little differently tonight. Instead of facts and figures, I want to tell you a story. And you may know this, you may not, and I have no idea where this story comes from. But when I heard this on the news at 11 o'clock that Thursday night, this came directly to mind, and I'd like to share it all with you. The sun and the wind looked down one day. It was a beautiful, calm day, and they saw a man with a beautiful brown jacket. The wind said to the sun, I bet I can make that man take the jacket off. And so the sun said, go ahead. So the wind blew and blew, and at first the jacket moved. But as the wind blew and blew, the man clutched tighter and tighter. He just held the jacket. And finally, the wind blew and blew and blew himself out, as sometimes happens, and he just said, it's impossible. It's no use. And the sun said, wait, let me try. So the sun went up in the sky and shone brightly and brightly and more brightly. And eventually it got warmer and warmer. And the man took that beautiful brown coat off. He did, the sun did, what the wind with all its power could not. And the wind actually asked the sun, how did you do that? That's amazing. The sun said, it's all in the way you present yourself. So I am coming here tonight to tell you to present yourself in a friendly manner calm, and gentle. I know that the EMTA charter has been a conflict for a long time, and I'm asking you that I am telling you that presentation matters. And when you go to county council and go to the mayor and go to the board, I do hope that you will be gentle about it, at least at first. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Any other citizens to be heard? Once. Any other citizens to be heard? Having none, let's move to the minutes.
So move for
been-
approval.
Yep. It's been moved by Councilman
Second.
Leon, seconded by Dr. Faust. Are you ready for the question?
Yes, sir.
Roll call, please.
On the minutes, Mr. Brenneman,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes. Item 7, reports from county officials. There's no report this evening from the county executive or designee. Finance Committee report, Dr. Faust.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last Thursday, the council met as the Finance Committee and agreed to put ordinances number 37 through and including ordinance number 44. And also, we had a discussion to move ordinances number 38 through 44 for second readings tonight to push those along just a little bit quicker and issues of timeliness. Also to adopt the resolution of number 23 regarding the YMCA project, and we have the figure of $1,900,000 that we'll have to amend that resolution to tonight, as well as the Community Service Financing Authority Presbyterian Homes project, also for a possible adoption of exonerating penalties and interest on 5 properties owned by Erie Western Pennsylvania Port Authority, to exonerate taxes on a couple properties in Union City, as well as to consider the appointment of Kathy Rosdick to the unexpired 5-year term on the Erie County Redevelopment Authority. We talked in our caucus tonight that we just may move to table that and talk about those types of appointments in the future. And also the possible sale of parcels from repository for unsold property according to an index number in our agenda tonight. And one thing that isn't on our agenda, but we did have a good discussion with, is with Kathy Rosdick, the Director of Planning, regarding the Greenways Plan and what the county may do in regard to that plan in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Faust. Personnel Chair,
Mr. Chair, the Personnel Committee met immediately following the Finance Committee, and we discussed under old business ordinance number 35. It's a second reading tonight, even though under the agenda it says first reading. We also had a discussion with the Director of Personnel regarding the unfilled Director of Veteran Affairs position. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
thank you, Councilman Brenneman. Councilwoman Law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the 19th of this month, I attended an informal meeting in Lake City sponsored by their council with small businesses of the area. I found out that there are businesses in the area who cannot get enough employees to run the business at the capacity needed. They view the problem as a want-to-work problem. The residents are getting too much subsidies from the government, and they don't think they need to go to work. We also discussed the Summer Jams program. Many of the businesses were interested in this program and wanted to know more about it. I contacted Kevin Arrington and the Director of Programs and gave him the contacts to those businesses and more possible contacts in my district. On Friday the 20th, I came to the courthouse to speak with our county executive about economic development for all of Erie County and the future makeup of the authorities available to the residents and businesses. On the 30th, Memorial Day, I was asked to be in the Legion Parade for Fairview in the morning and Girard in the afternoon. I was also asked to speak at the services in the cemetery, and I've done this for several years now, and I'm always honored to do that. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Law. Any other councilwomen people have a report? Being none, we'll move right to old business. Mr. Smith, will you please give us the second reading of ordinance number 35 in title only, please.
The second reading of ordinance number 35 of 2016, 2016 general fund budget, revised expenditures in the Prothonotary office.
So moved.
It's been properly moved by Councilman Brenneman, seconded by Councilman Leon.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just on this ordinance, at our last meeting, we had a resolution that I brought forward concerning the pay plan investigation that we're doing with Felice and Associates that we will have back at the end of this, or at the end of June. This is one of the reasons that that resolution to enact the pay plan was brought in, but also, with the last resolution from the last meeting, we voted to hold all raises going forward. I understand this is a different situation, but in the interest of showing consistency, I will not be supporting this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman DiMatteo. Any other discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Smith.
On ordinance 35, Mr. DiMatteo.
No.
Mrs. Fatika.
Yes.
Dr. Faust.
Yes.
Mr. Leon.
Yes.
Mrs. Law.
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman.
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes. Item 9 under new business, if you're following along with the agenda. First reading of ordinance number 37. Mr. Smith. Title only.
First reading of ordinance number 37 of 2016, 2016 general fund budget, waiver of the purchasing code to sell property identification number 14-010-045.0-409.000 and 14-010-045.0-408.00.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
move to amend tonight's agenda to make ordinances number 38 through and including ordinance number 44 second readings tonight.
Second.
It's been properly moved by Dr. Faust, seconded by Councilman Leon. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
On the motion, Mrs. Fatika.
Yes.
Dr. Faust.
Yes.
Mr. Leon.
Yes.
Mrs. Law.
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman.
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes. Now, if you're following along tonight with tonight's agenda or on the bulletin board, if you notice item 9, A was the first reading. Well, we don't vote on first readings. We only vote on second readings, and that's why we didn't have a vote, just for our student scholars here this evening. Item B, would you do a second reading? Mr. Smith, would you please read the second reading of ordinance number 38 in title only?
A second reading of ordinance number 38, 2016, 16th, 2016 general fund budget, supplemental appropriation of $12,291 and creation of line item for AOPC grant.
So move.
Second.
It's been properly moved by Councilman Leon, seconded by Dr. Faust. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
On ordinance 38, Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman.
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika.
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes. Item C, second reading of ordinance number 39 in title only, please.
A second reading of ordinance number 39, 2016, 17th, 2016 general fund budget, supplemental appropriation of $11,000 in grant funds and new line items for purchase of exercise equipment for Public Safety Department.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved by Councilman Brenneman, seconded by Councilman DiMatteo. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to point out for those in the audience that much of the items, when they come in as a grant, it's just a matter of pass-through, so it's not a matter of us allocating new funds. They're funds that are coming in. That's all I wanted to say, Mr. Chair.
Duly noted. Any further discussion? We're ready for the question. Roll call, Mr. Smith.
On ordinance 39, Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman.
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo?
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika?
Yes.
Dr. Faust?
Yes.
Chairman Horton?
Yes. Item D, second reading of ordinance number 40, in title only, please, sir.
A second reading of ordinance number 40 of 2016, 18th 2016 general fund budget, supplemental appropriation of $7,171 and new line items for vehicle lease donated by Bradford Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram.
So move.
Second.
Been properly moved by Councilman Leon, seconded by Councilman Brenneman. Any discussion? Being none, roll call, please, Mr. Smith.
Mrs. Law?
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman?
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo?
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika?
Yes.
Dr. Faust?
Yes.
Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Chairman Horton?
Yes. Item E, second reading of ordinance number 41, in title only, please.
A second reading of ordinance number 41, 2016, second 2016 Public Health Fund budget supplemental appropriation of $750 and creation of service fees line item for Health Promotion and Quality Improvement Bureau.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved by Councilman Leon.
No.
Excuse me,
I
Councilman Brenneman, seconded by Councilman Leon. Any questions or discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Smith.
On ordinance 41, Mr. Brenneman,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Second reading of ordinance number 42, in title only, please.
A second reading of ordinance number 42, 2016, 2016 Planning Fund budget, revised revenue and expenditures of $4,436 and creation of line item for Act 137 grant to the HRC.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved, and seconded by Councilman Dr. Faust and Leon. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
On ordinance 42, Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman,
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Second reading of ordinance number 43, 2016, in title only, please.
A second reading of ordinance number 43, 2016, 19th 2016 general fund budget, supplemental appropriation and transfer of $4,426 to Erie County Human Relations Commission for Act 137 testing.
So moved.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded by Dr. Faust, Councilman Leon. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
On ordinance 43, Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes. Item H, second reading of ordinance number 44, 2016, in title only, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm requesting that this be read in full.
Yep, Mr. Smith, you heard the request. Would you read that ordinance in full, please?
Ordinance number 44, 2016, to amend the EMTA charter to signify Erie County's intent to withdraw. Whereas the County of Erie desires to transform the EMTA into an autonomous regional authority to expand services within and beyond city limits, and to invest in assets designed to facilitate the needs of a rapidly growing ridership. And whereas the County of Erie, as one of two municipalities who established the EMTA on September 14, 1966, has contributed significantly more to the EMTA than the City of Erie for the past 25 years, while at the same time, the City of Erie has controlled the EMTA and confined its purposes to the city limits. Whereas the County of Erie desires to fund the entire local match of the EMTA effective January 1, 2017, and to relieve other municipalities, including the City of Erie, of their existing contributions to fund the local match of the EMTA. And whereas the County of Erie desires to structure the Board of EMTA to reflect representation across the county on a district-wide basis. And whereas the County of Erie desires to establish a Riders Advisory Council to review, criticize, and recommend transportation policy and procedure to the EMTA Board. And whereas the County of Erie intends to dedicate its resources to provide quality, responsive transit services throughout the county, to stimulate ridership and to promote the development of future transportation projects. Whereas the County of Erie intends to ensure a seamless transition of services, transfer of assets, assignment of contracts, and assumption of liabilities to maintain high employee morale and to instill public confidence in the EMTA. Now therefore be it enacted by the County Council of the County of Erie that the terms of the proposed transformation of the EMTA, as outlined on the attached Exhibit A, represents County Council's desire to improve public transportation for all citizens throughout the County of Erie. Be it further enacted by the County of Erie, the EMTA and the City of Erie cannot reach an agreement by June 30, 2016, then the County of Erie will signify its desire to withdraw as a founding municipality of the EMTA, assuring thereby the extension of the EMTA charter for the next 50 years under the auspices of the City of Erie. This ordinance shall be effective immediately upon adoption.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by Councilman Faust and Brenneman. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
As some of you may know, I'm not comfortable with the "be it further enacted" part at the end of this ordinance. But as we have attempted to meet with and work with the City of Erie Council several times, and they have not responded with a willingness to work or even talk to us as a group to come to some kind of agreement with the Erie Metropolitan Transit Authority. They have brought the situation to this point. I know we must have an or else, or what if, and this ordinance addresses that. I know that the city taxpayers are being double taxed on this matter because the city puts money towards the bus transportation, and also do we. We have offered to pay the city's share for a small concession of the makeup of the board for the authority and a shorter period for the charter. What bothers me about this is that if the city council decides to take full responsibility for the transit authority, that they will soon realize that they are going bankrupt, and the trust and the transit authority will go into receivership. Then and only then will they clear their minds and realize the financial hardship they put themselves in. At that time, the County of Erie will be there to pick up the remnants of the transit authority, and we must be ready. It is sad that it's gotten to this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman Law.
Mr.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I guess, and I would add to what Mrs. Lowell just had to say, I would like everyone to understand that, at least from my standpoint, I will keep trying, and I think we as a council would keep trying to come to some amicable decision with the city regarding the charter. But as everyone in this room knows, who have been following this, that hasn't, we can't negotiate with ourselves. All right, we have to have a willing participant in the city. Again, I guess I would just ask the members of council here, and I think everybody would be receptive. If the city would come forward and say, okay, here is what we come up with, at least we would have something to discuss. You know, I guess I'm not comfortable either. I think, you know, this is a very grave situation that we have come to, but quite frankly, the clock begins ticking right now, and they have until June 30th to actually come up with an answer as to how this is going to be resolved and how this is going to play out. You know, we've extended the olive branch, and I think Dr. Kyle said it, or Dr. Faust said it, that we've extended so many olive branches, the tree is gone. Okay? I mean, we have tried everything in our power to do this. We will continue to do that until June 30th. Please be mindful of that. But again, we have to have a participant in that negotiation. We can't do it alone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman DiMatteo. Any other council people?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Very simply, it's tax dollars that are funding the Erie Metropolitan Transit Authority, and there is not a proportionate amount of representation. So in a very simple term, what we're doing is just asking for the taxation with representation.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I think I mentioned this a few times before. It's been over a year and a half, so I probably mentioned it more times than that. I am a city resident. I work in the city. I pay city taxes, city property taxes. I work in the city. My wife does as well. I spend pretty much all my time within the city boundaries. I represent a third of the city, along with you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Leone. And from the outset of this discussion, I really had probably higher expectations that my representatives in city government would do something, I guess. Unfortunately, I think that they have shown themselves quite capable, and I'm not trying to talk harsh here. I think it's just a matter of realities. The fact that they have absolutely no interest to do anything above the status quo. The two biggest things we've seen them discuss is straight all contracts and $6,000 of CDBG funds. That's the biggest discussion you've seen out of them, even with all the violence and everything else that's come across, even when regards of this comp plan that's supposed to steer the future of our city. It worries me that here is an opportune time, in Council President Mirsky's own words, that the region to pay its fair share for regional services. Here is an opportune time when everybody in city government, including the mayor, has said that the city bears too much of a burden for the region. Here's an opportune time where they are being provided that opportunity, and they are simply blowing it off. And that, as much as I could say it disappoints me, it does anger me, but it doesn't anger me to the point where I would do anything brash or anything that I would do to try to get back at them whatsoever. No matter how much they want to cling on to the status quo, as much as they want to cling on to this expense that is burdening our citizens, it doesn't matter where the county funds come to provide this. You know, many other municipalities across the country, they have multiple revenue sources, multiple streams of revenue that they use to provide services for their taxpayers. In Pennsylvania, we're largely restricted to, in our county, at least in third-class counties, we're largely restricted to property taxes. We see how that constrains and chokeholds taxpayers, particularly those on fixed incomes, and you see what a detriment that has to our school districts and everything else. And because of the foresight that was brought before as far as providing another revenue source for our region, and gaming fund is a tax. I'm sorry, if a government is taking a portion of funds earned or received by an entity for the purposes of the government, that is a tax. And so we are taking tax funds raised here locally to pay for regional service. And if the elected officials in the city government want to sit on their hands and maintain this downward path of barely a managed decline, then so be it. But I'm not going to stand there and be a party to it, and I'm not going to help enable that. And in my mind, the right path forward is to regionalize the funding for this, and so we end that double taxation, so we end that the unfair representation, and so that we provide this truly regional service. And honestly, when it comes to representation on the board, it's funny that you might have city elected officials that worry that maybe the city's not going to get fair representation. Most of their board appointees aren't even from the city to begin with. Second, until they come down and say that city officials should be elected at a ward-by-ward basis, then it doesn't concern them that they should have closer representation. So in my mind, we are doing this, and it surprised me to this day, we're doing this in favor to the city, and I think it's something that we need to continue going forward with, and if they don't want to stand up and do their jobs or look out for the future, and if they really want to hold on to some board appointments for whatever power or ego that gives them, then so be it. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Brennan. Any other comments from my colleagues? I think I'll make some comments. I've kind of largely refrained from making public comment on the EMTA issue. But as with any other issue, I'm a staunch believer that no matter what the situation is, good, bad, or indifferent, it can only improve with communication. Unfortunately, we haven't had much communication from our counterparts across the park. I want to apologize to you, Ms. Minnick, and all the other riders who use the lift in the EMTA. I want to apologize to you because I feel that the mayor has introduced an element of fear to the ridership. I serve the 2nd Legislative District. 60% of my district doesn't have a driver's license. We don't have a market on the East Bluff or the West Bluff. They expect people to buy vegetables from Family Dollar or the gas station, which is like buying lobster from a gas station. There are a lot of needs in this community. I don't have to point out all of them to you. You pick up the paper every day. Here at in county government, 73% of our budget is allocated, or used to be, or should be, to human services. We have nothing but the heart of the people in mind. We've been mischaracterized. We've been lied on. We have no desire or interest in changing or participating in which route EMTA uses or doesn't use. We have no interest in whether the routes run up State Street or Peach Street. And so we simply wanted to fund the project, as Councilman Brenneman said, because we were more able to do that. And I believe it was a Emerge 2040 Destination Erie agenda item as well. But I apologize to you for the fear, and I extend this invitation to you because if not by the end of the week, 2nd Legislative District is going on the road. I want to come out and I want to explain to those people who live in my district just exactly what's going on, whether it's the PowerPoint bulletin with every communication on it that we've sent or received since December of 2014 to try to resolve this thing in the most humblest way possible. And so my invitation to you is, all aboard Erie, is if you want to help me plan those informational things, maybe at King Center or John F. Kennedy Center, if you have a core group of people, any place else you want me to come to explain the county's position on EMTA, I'll be there. And you have my number. I'm going to do the meetings with or without all aboard Erie. I think it's time that the public knows exactly what's going on. It's a real disservice. It saddens me that we as adults and we as elected officials weren't able to come to some sort of amicable resolve for the good of the order of all citizens. And so we'll work and we'll pick up the pieces, whatever is left after, maybe they can afford it, I don't know. But their action says that they want it. We don't want to, I, as chairman of the council, refuse to watch my colleagues, really good men and women, die a death of 1,000 cuts. By every week gets an article on EMTA beating up, characterizing us as bullies, corporate takeover, hostile takeover, and that's not it at all. And so, and the one thing that I refuse to do is spend taxpayer dollars on a long extended battle in court. I won't do that. I just assume I say, here, give it to you. You have our prayers and best wishes, but you can't have our money, not with some equity. So that's my comment on it. If there's no other discussion, I call for the question. Could you do the roll call, Mr. Smith?
Yes, on ordinance 44, Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Lull,
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes. Item J,
Resolution number
Thank you.
23.
possible adoption of resolution number 24. Mr. Smith,
23.
is that 23? I missed
Yes, it
one.
is.
Oh, yep, 23. I need glasses. Let me borrow your glasses. Oh, excuse
Resolution
me.
number 23 of Erie County Council, Erie County General Authority not to exceed $6.5 million tax exempt note.
Gotta amend it.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, move to amend this resolution with a final figure of $1,900,000, which more accurately reflects the not-to-exceed number of the project.
Second.
It's been properly moved by Dr. Faust, seconded by Councilman Leon. Any questions? Roll call
On the amendment.
On the amendment?
on the
Mr.
amendment.
Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Mrs. Lahl?
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman?
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo?
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika?
Yes.
Dr. Faust?
Yes.
Chairman Horton?
Yes.
And on the resolution as amended?
Resolution as amended.
Yep, roll call on the resolution as amended.
Mrs. Lahl?
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman?
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo?
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika?
Yes.
Dr. Faust?
Yes.
Mr. Leon?
Yes.
Chairman Horton?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, there are 3 copies of that resolution and the next,
Great,
should it pass.
great. Item J, possible adoption of resolution number 24, Mr. Smith.
Erie County Council Resolution Number 24, 2016, Erie County Community Services Financing Authority, Presbyterian Homes, and the Presbytery of Lake Erie project additions.
So move.
Second?
Properly moved and seconded by Dr. Faust and Mr. Leon. Any discussion? Roll call.
On Resolution 24, Mr. Brenneman,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Lahl,
Yes.
Chairman Horton,
Yes. Item K, possible adoption of resolution number 25 in 2016. Mr. Smith, please.
Resolution Number 25 of 2016, exonerating penalties and interest on 5 properties owned by the Western Pennsylvania Port Authority.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved by Councilman Brenneman, seconded by Councilman DiMatteo. Any discussion or question?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
obviously I'll be voting no on this. And the reason why is because I think it would set a precedent in this particular case, so I'm just telling you I'm voting no.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion on this? Roll call.
On Resolution 25, Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
No.
Mr. Leon,
No.
Mrs. Lahl,
No.
Mr. Brenneman,
No.
Chairman Horton,
No.
resolution fails.
Item L, possible adoption of resolution number 26, 2016.
Resolution 26 of 2016, exonerating delinquent taxes on one abandoned trailer property number 41-004-006.1-008.67 in the Borough of Union City and the Union City Area School District.
So moved.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded by Councilman DiMatteo and Leon. Any discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Lahl,
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo,
Yes.
Chairman Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to move to table the the possible appointment under item M.
Second.
It's been properly moved by Mr. Leon and seconded by Councilwoman Law to table item M. Any discussion, questions?
Move right to vote on that.
Roll call.
On the motion, Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Mr. Horton.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
move to approve the sale of parcels from repository for unsold properties according to the index number in our agenda tonight.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Council persons Faust and Leon. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
On the sale, Dr. Faust,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Brenneman,
Yes.
Mr. DiMatteo.
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, meeting adjourned.